on YouTube, you see a lot of Madden commentators out there that want to rebuild a lot of teams, and that's usually the big thing right here. A lot of people want to see more GMing or general managing in Connected Franchise rather than seeing actual gameplay footage from Connected Franchise. So here's just some tips and tricks when it comes to rebuilding teams. I was fairly successful with the Jacksonville Jaguars in another franchise, not on this one, but in another one. And right here, I thought to myself that when it comes to rebuilding teams, you really need to, there's a lot of things you need to look at. And I think one thing for sure is when it comes to teams, if you're going to do a team where you're just keeping the rosters the same, so no fantasy draft, leave the schemes alone. And ideally, you just play the way that that team is meant to be played. That's the best way to do it, because you don't want to really like put a different player there if he doesn't really fit their scheme. Now, if it's like a Julio Jones or an Aaron Rodgers, they really don't matter what scheme that they are in. It really just doesn't matter because they're just so great. But there are some players out there that might be very scheme oriented. For instance, Carson Palmer might do a lot better in a vertical offense than he will do in a West Coast offense. And this is me just kind of scrolling for the schemes right here, and you just want to keep it set. But if it's a fantasy draft and you kind of want to change the team way your team wants to play, so for instance, the Jacksonville Jaguars here, they run a West Coast offense. Let's just say you want to change them to a vertical offense. You want to check the schemes to vertical offense. You want to change everything. And then once you go into the fantasy draft players that would make sense for that. And especially when learning how offenses work, really get to learn, like look up on Wikipedia how these offenses work, or if there's a certain offense that you want to emulate. If you want to emulate the New England Patriots offense, you want to get players that are similar to the Patriots, and you kind of want to play in that style and run the way they want to. So just kind of modern teams, just kind of look at them and how they want to do it. So if you want to model an offense, if there's an offense inside your head you really want to do, so like the 2007 New England Patriots, you're going to think to yourself, okay, who did they have? They had a great quarterback, they had a great receiver. So obviously you had Tom Brady, who was this quick release kind of quarterback, pocket passer, so you want to focus maybe on getting a pocket passing quarterback. And then for receiver, obviously Randy Moss was a huge freak, and I think the closest thing to Randy Moss would be a Julio Jones, so that would be a guy you would go for right there. So that's the idea about mimicking an offense right there and really finding the way how you put it there. And especially when you learn how to run, how a West Coast offense works, or a vertical offense power run. And I just say those offenses because those are the most common offenses in the NFL. Just watch and how they learn and look them up on Wikipedia. I'll share the links in the description if you want to. But basically, if you want to know the difference, is a West Coast offense is basically an offense that relies on crossing routes. It's also nicknamed the horizontal offense, that you're running a lot of crossing routes. And ideally, if you throw a lot of those, that will eventually maybe hope the team would probably play a zone that should open up a long vertical pass or a long vertical run. And there's a lot of variations of the West Coast offense. Now, a lot of people say it would be a short passing offense, which the West Coast offense can be, but also it could be a deep passing offense, as you see Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre both ran the West Coast offense, and they're both deep passers. Now, when I look at this, you kind of think to yourself that it's not necessarily one of these things that you look at and you just want to be realistic. Or like when it comes to vertical offenses, you would look at vertical offenses in the league. Or if you think of the 1980 San Diego Chargers, if you want to run offense with that, with Dan Fouts or that kind of offense, you know they had a receiving tight end, you know they had a receiving running back, they had a receiving receivers that were really good, that could really stretch the field. So that's what I look at. And also when it comes to that, I think just look it up on your own and really watch the NFL really helps. And if you want to emulate a certain team's offense, make sure you get players that are similar to that offense to put on your team, especially because that's just how it works. The idea about it is studying and just analyzing things. Patterns are the best way to think it. And I think the best GMs in this league have the best IQs, and I just think to myself that I thought if you have good IQs, you can analyze and all that, and that's something I do. So just keep your mind sharp like that. And on another note, as you might have saw earlier, I committed my goal to 10 games, a 10-win season, and the reason why I did that was because last time I played with this same franchise, I actually they actually ended up winning 10 games, but on this one, I wasn't so lucky. I actually got only one game, only one out of 6, and I just look at that and thought to myself that those are some things that is to look at. And also, probably the best way to play this way, but probably the more tedious and it's more of a micromanaging kind of aspect of how to play connected franchise, is just go week by week and trying to just do the game plan, do it like start certain guys. So let's just say you have a power back going in, and let's just say you're going against a slow defense, maybe you would want a faster running back to go in there. So there's that idea of game planning every week, just kind of micromanaging, because the more you micromanage, the better you're actually going to get a result, and I think that would be really helpful. And right here I didn't micromanage at all, because you just kind of have to get through and just kind of have to do it, because most commentators, what they do, they either go to the mid-season or send the entire regular season and all that, and they get through it, and then they do the injury reports and whatnot, or putting on injury reserve or sign a guy here and there. So that's just how something I would like to look at. But the more micromanaging you do, the better, but it's more tedious. And the reason why commentators don't really do it is because they want to show how they really do it, and micromanaging can be really difficult at times and be really tedious. But if you want to do something really well right there, and you want to really make your team really good, you don't really do the full sim, you actually micromanage. But for this case, just because it's a video, I had to micromanage it. Now here I just lost a service with the EA, and eventually actually I'll get back on pace with the EA servers. You know how EA servers are, they're really bad at times. So when it comes to that offense, and I think really for the most part, I've been talking about offense, I'm really going to stick to offense. I think when it comes to formation subs, that also pretty much helps. I think when you look at teams, I think that a good example is putting in running backs, like more of a power back in your goal line package, or depending how you run goal line. If you like to run up the middle, you probably want a power back, but if you like to run the HB toss a lot, or you like to throw it in, you might want a more of a scat back / a tailback in the running back instead of like a power back, who I am using as Chris Ivory. And when it came to the packages, just putting the best player in there at decisions, that would really help out. And I think one thing for sure I definitely do when it comes to packages, when it comes to like X, Y, and Z, you probably have heard that if you played football before. It's when it comes to wide receivers, Y is the slot, Z is the second outside receiver, and usually the Y is with the Z receiver, which is your second outside, and then your X is your lonesome outside receiver, and usually he's your most athletically gifted wide receiver. And those are kind of some examples right there what you can implement. Now when it comes to statistics, really look at these statistics. Obviously, you just have to. I think that's pretty straightforward. And just look what's happening. I remember when looking at statistics, Blake Bortles had the 47th ranked QBR in the league. That's absolutely terrible, because he does play in a West Coast system, and I understand that you play in a West Coast system. Ideally, it's a lot less, not necessarily less aggressive for the most part. Usually, it's more passive than a vertical offense. But ideally, you want to keep that QBR probably in the 30. I mean, 47 is just awful, but usually if he's around like 20th, I think that's a good pace right there. And I think when you look at that, that's like kind of statistics right there, just kind of knowing. Now, if you're running a vertical offense, and let's just say they are supposed to be aggressive offense, let's just say they're not throwing for many yards, that's a big problem. Now, with this West Coast offense, I have the Jaguars, I have Blake Bortles, he has a super strong arm, and when you look at that, if you're going to have a really strong arm quarterback, you kind of want to take some shots down the field, and I do have that. And ideally, when I look at that, that's definitely something I would look at. And I think here's another tip is when it comes to wide receivers or your slot receivers, usually returnmen make great slot receivers at times. I noticed Rashad Green was kind of a guy who was doing very well as a returnman, but at the same time though, Marquise Lee was a guy who was doing who led my team receiving. So maybe some players need to be benched, maybe Allen Hurns needs to be benched. Those are some things to look at and kind of put down. And also right here, for it comes to coaches, I made my coach George Lopez. And ideally, I pick a team builder. I just pick something logical here. If you're picking a team, if you want to do the Patriots, you probably want a strategist coach that knows how to do all that stuff. Or you want to make a lot of trades, you pick the one that helps you with the most trades and whatnot. That's the idea about it. And I think that's overall. I really talked mostly about offense. And I know when it comes to this, those are definitely some things to look at. Think of schemes. Think about statistics. Obviously, when you look at, because that's really how you're going to look at it, because you're not really playing the games at all. And really think about your decision. Think about what your reasonable goal is. Like, I did 10 games. That was absolutely ridiculous. That's not something you should do. So overall, guys, thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more videos like this, comment if you want to. I try to do some gaming because that's just something I really want to do on YouTube. So see ya.